Good evening, friends. Hello, this is Amritansh from Platonic, and I'm just going to bring out few points which I think can be useful for your upcoming exam, which is tomorrow for political science. So there are just few points like, for example, you need to make sure that you give a good impression in the starting. That means that when you write your 10 markers in the beginning, please make sure you address all the subcomponents so that the examiner, which is going through your answers, makes a recognition of how good a student you are. Second point is time management, which is extremely crucial. For time management, just make a mental note that you have around 35 minutes per question, which you need to take into account. So ultimately, for five questions, you have 175 minutes here and there, and 5 minutes maybe for writing or just filling out few entries. So be very particular that you devote equal time to all the questions so that you don't miss out on some of the important questions which you may know. The third point is also extremely important, that you have to be decisive. And by decisive, you need to first understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Maybe you are good in theory section, maybe section A is good for you, or section B. So decide accordingly so that you don't A, waste precious time choosing which questions you want to attempt, and B, you don't make a wrong choice and then you repent later that you could have attempted another question more in a better sense. Now, the fourth point is perhaps the most important point. And when we are talking of a structured answer, please make sure that you address all the demands. You can have a basic introduction wherein you tell about the context of the question, or you can introduce the scholar or the theory. In your body, please make sure that you address and include all the possible dimensions, theories, subcomponents which are relevant for the question. Then the third component is also important, that you can also compare, or you can perhaps contrast or criticize. By comparison, I mean if you perhaps write of Machiavelli, you can compare it with the Indian tradition of Kautilya. Then, in case of comparison, while you are writing maybe of Hannah Arendt, you can mention Aristotle's civic republicanism. That is something. And in case of criticism, try to address some points wherein you criticize the scholars or the theories with different happenings or different theories. Like, for example, when you are mentioning equality of opportunity, do make it a point to tell about equality of outcome, and then perhaps conclude it with a social liberal perspective or something of the similar sort. And it's very important that you conclude holistically and give a comprehensive analysis at the end, which shows that you understand the topic really well. Now, as far as possible, please use keywords, quotation, or the important lines from the scholar or from the theory. For example, if you're writing of Marx, mention dialectical materialism, historical materialism, his theory of alienation, anything specific quotation of him which you can remember, that is certainly going to help. And then there are some open ended questions which are asked, especially in paper one. For example, if the question is just written right to property, or it has written distributive justice, in such questions, please make sure that you are addressing it in the most comprehensive manner. And by that, you can initially just give a good introduction in the body. Try to delve with it chronologically. For example, how was distributive justice in the ancient Greek times during Aristotle? That you can mention. Then you can slowly mention the different, maybe in the medieval times, how it was if you want to write about it. Then you can go and mention the liberal perspective, classical liberals, social liberals, Marxist perspective. So in such questions, especially in the 10 markers, you need to make sure that you cover a lot of breadth, and you don't need to necessarily be focused on the depth, right? And then presentation, that is absolutely important. You need to ensure that whatever content you mention is properly underlined, the scholars are and the keywords are properly underlined. You have also ensured neatness, because not only is the content important, but its presentation also adds a lot of value to what you write, right? And the last thing is, I have also mentioned it in my Telegram post, that perfect is the enemy of good. Now, at this point of time, just forget all of your mocks scores that you have given. Of course, do remember the feedback which you have got. But more important than that, it's important for you to just write basic average or above average answers for all the questions. Because if you're able to attempt all the questions properly, more or less you're certain to get very good marks. So just keep all these pointers in mind, and I'll also have a very small video on what things you can keep in mind for paper 2. So my best wishes with you. Just perform to the best of your abilities. Thank you.